Hi everyone! How's everybody doing today? I decided to hop on and talk about different ways to teach kids about money. I'm hoping that in the next hour, hopefully less than an hour, I can give you some different tools and techniques that you can use to teach your child about money. So I've been doing this, as many of you know, for over 10 years. It's going to be 11 years soon. And one thing that I've learned is that there is no one fit all when it comes to teaching kids about money. And because of that, I developed my framework, which essentially helps parents come up with their personalized money teaching approach. And it essentially gives you different options so that you can choose from, this tool or that tool and kind of build your own money teaching plan that works best for your family. So that's what I'm planning on going through today. Just give me a second. I actually wrote down a few things here. Okay, so first I want to talk about the core of the framework. This is sort of like a base that holds everything together. And this is the stuff that we really need to figure out first before we start teaching our kids about money. So the first thing is family values. The second thing is your child's money personality and learning style. The third one is the money mindset. And the last one is that all parents and caregivers need to be in the same agreement when it comes to teaching kids about money. So let's talk about family values real quick. We don't all parent the same way. We parent in accordance to our family values. So teaching kids about money works exactly the same way. We actually need to develop our money teaching style based on our family values. So an example would be, let's say you are a parent that, or like your family really cares about environment. And this is like really important to you. So you would be aligning your money teaching approach with that belief, those values. So you would be investing, for example, and teaching your child to invest in companies, or not companies, sorry. Your portfolio would be including ESG and SRI investments. So if you don't know what ESG and SRI are, don't worry. A lot of people don't. Especially if they don't know much about investing. But ESG means environmental, social, and governance investing, and SRI means socially responsible investing. So that's on the investment side. On the purchasing side, like when you're buying things, you would be probably buying and supporting companies that care about the same things that you do, such as environment, maybe they don't have child labor, those kind of things, right? And then, of course, there's a donating aspect of money, and you would be donating to organizations that whose values line up with your values that are very same. And you would be teaching your child to do the same thing. So there's lots of different family values out there. I encourage you to really sit down and think about what is important to you. What does this... what do you want to impart on your child when it comes to money? Because that will really impact, how you teach them. And then the second thing, as I said, is child's money personality. So it sounds vague, but actually we're all born with different money personalities. You may even know people who are, they come from the same set of parents, they grew up in the same household, but they have completely different money habits. Like typically we know of a saver and a spender, but there is a great book by Jolene Godfrey. It's called Raising Financially Fit Kids. And in that book, she lists 7 different money personalities. So, there are different kinds of personalities out there. And, when you actually start teaching your child about money, you get to understand what their money personality is. And then you can line it up with your family values and your own money personality. So one example is I've been teaching my kids about money for the past 10, 11 years. And one was a natural saver, another one was a natural spender. And what has happened is that if this is a spectrum, right? Like one child was here, another one was here, and me and my husband were kind of in the middle. So we wanted to line up the kids and kind of bring them more towards the middle. And so we had to use certain techniques and teach them certain things that, for the one that was a big time saver, a natural saver, we had to teach them that, it's okay to part with your money. It's okay to donate and give money to charities. It's okay to buy a gift for somebody that you love and care about because it's their birthday. And for the other child that was like a big spender, it was more like, hey, let's talk about how maybe we can save some money, or, maybe spend less because we're using a coupon or we're price matching, etc. So there's a lot, as I said, when it comes to money personalities that you can do. And again, not every child is a spender and a saver. I've dealt with kids, for example, that had a money personality where they just wanted to hoard their money. It was called a hoarder. So it's a little bit different than a saver. Whereas hoarder, they really don't like parting with their money. They like looking at it. They just like having it in front of them. And there was a child actually in my Wealthy Kids Investment Club, and the parent told me that this particular child really liked to see their money, see that money grow. But that child was also simultaneously not really interested in learning other money lessons. And so, we had to connect that child's personality to the money lessons. So it was kind of like, well, how are we going to do that? So a good way to do that is to actually figure out what is it that the child cares about. So you find these things that they care about and you set goals. So this particular child wanted an electric guitar because he was part of a band. So we actually connected that goal to the money lessons. So the money lessons were like, hey, as soon as some money comes in, whether it's from allowance or from gifts, you're supposed to save that money. And then eventually we're going to invest that money. And then very soon you'll be able to afford that electric guitar. So that is a really good way to kind of connect the kids who don't care or don't want to learn about money to the money lessons. So you find that goal, you find that thing that they care about. And then another part of this is when you are teaching your child about money, you want to think about their learning styles. So we don't all learn the same way. Obviously, by now, you probably know how your child learns. Some kids learn best by doing. Some of them are okay if you just, tell them about your experiences and tell them, don't do that or do this. And they just learn that way. But you have to really figure out what is the best way for your child to learn. And that's kind of how you teach. And then the fourth thing of this nucleus that I was talking about, this base that holds everything together, is that all parents and caregivers need to be on the same page. So, for example, it's kind of like parenting. When we parent, as parents, we want to be on the same page. Okay. And, it goes the same for the money because, if one parent is giving one message and another parent is giving a different message, the kids are going to be confused. So you want to be sending the same message. And the best way to send the same message is if you sit down and you talk about it and figure out, okay, what are our family values? What do we want to make sure that we teach and that our children know when it comes to money? And then how we're going to do that. In my parent online course, How to Teach Kids to Become Millionaires, it actually comes with some workbooks, and there is one workbook which is fantastic. And by the way, you can probably even do this, on your own. But the workbook actually, so both parents print it. They go kind of in their own corner of the house, take 5 minutes, fill it out, and then they come together and then they compare their answers. And everything that they disagree on, this is a great opportunity for them to sit down and hash it out and talk about it and come up with the ways that, they can, I guess, agree on to teach kids about money. So when I first designed this particular workbook, my husband and I were already teaching our kids about money for about 5 or 6 years, and I thought we were on the same page. And so I was like, oh, let's just test this workbook out. And we were not. When we came together, we each kind of went our separate ways, filled it out, And when we came together, I was like, wait a second, I thought we were on the same page, but we weren't. So it was a great opportunity for us to talk about this and, figure out, okay, what is it that we want to teach our kids when it comes to money? And then the last thing that I want to mention is the mindset. So the mindset is really important. We all grew up in a certain environment that affected us and how we think about money. And we have to be very careful that if our mindset is not right, we don't want to pass that on to our children. So our kids, they listen to what we're saying. They copy everything we're doing. And we need to be very much aware of like how we are coming across. So, things that we can consider would be, what did you hear about money when you were growing up? What was modeled with respect of money in your family? And did any emotional incidents occur regarding money? So when you think about all of those things, it can give you an idea how you view money. Some people think of money as evil. When I go to schools and I teach workshops, sometimes one of the first questions I like to ask kids is like, hey, who wants to be rich one day? And majority of the times, most of the hands go up. Sometimes there are some kids that tell me, I don't want to be rich. And I'm like, well, okay, why is that? And they're like, you know what, Miss Maya, people who are rich, they're evil. And I'm like, wait a second, like, why do you think that? Where did this come from? So obviously, some of it is upbringing and like maybe what they heard from their parents. But I try to explain to them, being wealthy is not necessarily, it's not a bad thing because you can help people that you care about. You can donate money to the charities that you care about. So being wealthy is not a bad thing. Like a lot of times, like when parents come to my workshops, especially women, a lot of women tell me, that they grew up with the mindset where it was always man's job to worry about money. And it was a man's job to invest. And some of them even say, like, when it comes to investing, they're like, oh, investing is for rich only, or it's really hard to learn. But investing is really for all of us, and it's not as difficult to learn as you may think it is. Even Peter Lynch, who is one of the most famous investors, said that as long as you've completed grade 5 math, you can actually learn to invest. So it's pretty simple. So it's all about the mindset. And you know what? As parents, if we, let's say if we're afraid of investing and we think that, oh, it's so hard to invest and I can't learn how to invest and investing takes a long time and all of those things, then we will never attempt to learn it. And we're not going to pass it on to our kids because we don't know what we're talking about. So if we don't pass it on to our kids, guess what? The schools are not going to pass it on to our kids. And the only time our kids will learn about this is only if they take interest into it, like if they become interested in it, and or maybe if they go into a investing career, they become a stockbroker or investment advisor or something like that. So I always encourage parents to invest or learn how to invest because it's really not that hard. I do have a blog that's actually very helpful, that it explains, how this investing works. It's really simple. There is a simple way and lazy way of investing, especially for long-term investors. And of course, there's more complex investing, and some of it is like day trading. And I don't recommend day trading. I would never do it. It's way too stressful and way too risky, in my opinion. But for somebody who's a long-term investor, there's a lazy way to do it. And there's a lazy way to do it really well. So if you're interested in that blog, let me know, send me a message. I will forward it to you. And I also have a 4-step cheat sheet, which is a free cheat sheet. And, you can see how I invest with my kids and what I do. So that's free as well. The link is in my bio. So, feel free to take a look at that. I see a comment in here. It says, Shasha says, I'm trying to learn how to invest for myself and my daughters. Yeah, that's the way to do it. Most of us did not learn how to invest when we were growing up, but we can do better for our kids. And that is really creating generational wealth and changing your generational wealth trajectory. And then, you know what? Your children, one day when they know how to invest, they are going to teach your grandkids. And that's basically how it goes. And Shasha says her kids are 8 and 6. This is perfect. It's a perfect age to start learning about investing. So that's great. And by the way, I also have a Wealthy Kids Investment Club, which is a family membership program that teaches families how to successfully invest. But if this is something that you are interested in, I can tell you more about it. The membership is $8 per month. But you also get like a freebie, a free course with it. So I'll tell you all about it at the end, and we can talk about it more. Somebody's asking, where do you start? What is the first thing to do with investing? I like to start, and I wouldn't invest too much money on this, but this is kind of what I did with my own kids. At first, we actually started with savings accounts. So they noticed that they were getting only a little bit of interest in the savings account. And then we moved on to term deposits, which was a little bit more of an interest, a little bit less of risk. And then when they were ready, we started investing in stocks. And now we're actually investing in index funds and ETFs. But when we started investing in stocks, we were investing in companies that they knew and understood. So it was companies that make products and offer services that they use. So it was companies like Disney, Roblox, Netflix, Apple. And by the way, this is not a suggestion for you to invest in any of these companies. You really should do your own research. But that's sort of what we did. And it was really cool for our kids to know that, hey, I'm a part owner of Disney. We went to Disneyland and they're like, I own this place and or part of this place, right? And so it's pretty cool. And they can, that's the best way to start grasping investing and what investing is. So yeah, I mean, we can talk about investing a bit more, but I just thought I would quickly go through other parts of the framework. So I did go through the base of the framework. Once you figure out your base, and your base doesn't change. Your base is kind of like who your family is. What are your family values? What do parents agree on how they're going to teach about money? And then you can move on to other parts of the framework. And this is what I want to talk about. So how to teach kids to earn money, save money, spend, donate, and invest. And I think there is a question, how do we start with your program? So actually for the program, you can just go to wealthykids.club. Once you register there, it's $8 American per month. And you can cancel at any time, but I offer a free gift. So you just need to give us like about 24 hours, but we basically send you a free course on how to teach your kids to become millionaires with all of its workbooks and for parents and for kids. But then the membership itself, once you're in it, all the video lessons are on demand. You can watch them at any time that you choose that works best for you. Each lesson comes with a workbook and a game as well that you can play with your family members and other other people that are members of the club. So it's pretty cool. And we have VIP events and things like that, a private Facebook group where you can ask questions and so on. So, but yeah, going back to the framework, teaching kids framework. So if you want to, like, for example, so once you figured out those basic things, you want to teach them how to earn money. So there are different ways kids earn money. Sometimes they earn it from allowance. Sometimes, they get gifts for their birthdays or special occasions. Some of them have part-time jobs. Some of them are entrepreneurs. But regardless of how this money ends up in their hands, there are certain things that we need to teach them. So I actually want to talk about allowance because this is one, topic that I get a lot of questions about. So I'd like you to consider allowance as, a lot of times people think allowance is a gift because, it's somebody giving you money and it's like, oh yeah, this is great. But allowance, I would like you to consider that allowance is not a gift, that allowance is actually a teaching tool. And why is it a teaching tool? It's a teaching tool and not a reward because the dollar amounts are low and the stakes are not high. So your money becomes their money and they treat it very differently. Okay. And that, like they treat it very differently than they would treat your money. So when you go to a store, they have no idea what your budget is, how much money you have in your bank account, and so on. But when you give them that money, they know exactly how much is there, and they pretty much know that if they spend it, that money is gone. It's not coming back. So it's a really, allowance is like allowing kids to practice managing money. And then, you also get to know their money personality when you see them, how they're managing their money. And if you don't know what their money personality is like right now, you get to really learn what their money personality is during, like when you give them allowance. And then you can align that money personality of your child with your own family values, which is something that we talked about earlier. But yeah, like when, you give them allowance when they're small, you're not giving them large sums of money. So even if they make a mistake, it's not a big deal. I think a bigger deal would be if you give them allowance and if you don't give them allowance and if you don't teach them how to manage money, but they go off to university, they land this like 6-figure job, and now for the first time they have to manage money. Well, they don't really know what they're doing. They can really get themselves in financial trouble. So it's allowance is a great tool to teach kids about money. Now, there are 4 different allowance methods, and this is what I was talking about framework. You kind of get to pick and choose what works best for you. So there's allowance that is tied to chores, and the parents who actually believe in this type of allowance, they want their kids to develop work habits. They want their kids to have no sense of entitlement. So essentially, if the chore is not done, they don't get allowance. But there are also, the second option that people have when it comes to allowance is allowance not tied to chores. And the chores are done out of the duty as a family member. And these parents actually believe that the child will not be compensated when they get older, for making their bed or setting the table for dinner. Essentially, they believe that kids should be doing these chores because they're a member of the family. And so when these kids don't do these chores, they don't lose their allowance, but instead what these parents take away would be play dates, screen time, and so on. And then there is a third allowance method, which is the hybrid between the two, where essentially you're still, as a parent, giving allowance, a certain amount of allowance, but then the kids have an option to earn a portion of allowance as well, like by doing certain chores. And those could be chores that maybe you pay somebody else to do. It could be, a car wash, right? Maybe instead of going through the car wash, you actually pay your child to wash your car. I used to pay our kids to shred my confidential documents instead of taking them to Staples for shredding. So it's up to you. You can kind of come up with different ideas as to what your kids can do. So that's the third allowance method. And then the fourth allowance method is really no allowance at all. So yeah, if you don't want to do allowance, you don't have to. However, the key is that you have to set a stellar example of how money should be managed. So you need to show them how you do your, let's say, budgeting and how you pay your bills on time and all that. And because they really watch and they learn from us. But I would always suggest that when you give no allowance, that you give them some opportunities to manage money. And I just talked about that recently in one of my reels. Like, my daughter went, or actually both of my kids ended up going on overnight trips just recently. And, we gave them a certain amount of money for the trip. And we're like, okay, well, this is yours. This is supposed to cover your food and maybe some souvenirs. So be careful how you spend it because, you may end up with no money. So it teaches them to manage that money. Another example would be their birthday party, like budgeting for their birthday party or budgeting for back to school shopping and so on. I think there was a question in here. It says, how do you teach them to save? We're going to talk about that in a moment. That's coming up actually. But essentially, I just want to go back quickly to allowance. So what's the best allowance method? Essentially, you pick what works best for you. As I said at the very beginning, when I logged on, There is no one fit all approach. So every family really needs to decide what works best for you. And you can just choose what works best for your family values. But other things that you should consider when it comes to allowance is, how much money to give. Again, entirely up to you. What you can do is you can add up all the previous all the purchases that you've done on their behalf. So let's say in the last month, you bought candy for them, you bought them a toy, you did, I don't know, gave them some money for the school bake shop. So you can add all that up, and that's the total for the month. Then you can divide that by how many monthly chores there are, and right away you have an amount per chore, okay? Because you're transferring the responsibility from you onto them. So how often to give? Entirely up to you again. I know some parents have told me they give it weekly. Some parents give it bi-weekly. Some parents align it with when they get paid. So if they get paid bi-weekly, they give it bi-weekly because it's just easier to transfer that money to the kids. And if something doesn't work, by the way, if you choose any of these things that I'm talking about today, and you try it and it's not working, it's okay. It just means you have to try something different. So that's why I'm giving you like all these different tools, and you try them and you figure out, okay, which one works best for you. That's why every family's money teaching plan is unique. And, I remember one time somebody told me, oh, we tried allowance and we tried teaching our kids about money, but we failed. We just, it didn't really work out. Well, what you were trying didn't work out, but that doesn't mean that the whole thing failed. Like, you just need to try something else. And there are different tools that you can use. So yeah, the big thing is what I, want you to understand is that allowance is just a tool. Okay. It's a tool to teach kids how to manage money. And by the way, it should not be just handed over. Rockefeller actually and his son back in 1920s, they had an agreement, a written agreement as to his son was a teenager, and they had a written agreement as to what his son had to do with the allowance that he got. And this agreement is actually printed in Smithsonian Magazine. So if you go to Smithsonian website and you put in Rockefeller allowance contract with his son, you actually can get the full printout of the contract and you can see what was in that contract. I thought it was pretty cool. So his son had to do certain thing with the money, and they would meet, I believe, once a month. And then his father would go through the son's, one thing he had to do was keep a log of everything that he spent money on. And his son, the Rockefeller would go through it. And if he was happy the way the son was managing the money, that he was donating to charity and all this and that, every once in a while he would get a raise in the allowance. So you can do something similar with your child, or it doesn't need to be as, you don't need a contract, but you can have a contract if you want to. But essentially the idea is don't just give them allowance and say, here you go, see you later. The point is you actually have to be involved and teach them what to do with that allowance. Okay. So those are the things that we're going to talk about next. So how do we teach them to save that money? How do we teach them to spend it and donate it and invest it? So for spending, there are obviously there's so many different ways. You can teach them how you save money on spending. So do you use coupons? Do you price match? How do you research big purchases and save money? Do you buy off season? Do you buy used instead of new? Those are all things that sometimes we don't think about sharing with our kids, but next time you're actually doing any one of those, it's kind of like saying, hey kid, come here. Okay, this is what I'm doing. I'm planning to, purchase something, item ABC, and I don't want to pay the full price. This is how I'm going to save money, and I want you to learn along and, understand what I'm doing so that one day you can save money. Yeah, somebody's asking, actually, I'm getting a lot of questions about saving money. So yeah, I'm going to talk about that in just 1 minute. I do want to talk about donating real quickly. A lot of times people are surprised when I tell them that donating is part of financial literacy. But if we can teach our kids to be grateful for what they have, because somebody always has more than they do or somebody has less than they do, I think that's really important because, when we're happy with what we have, sometimes we don't want to spend money. We're like, this is good, I don't know, this watch, I actually got it for my 40th birthday a while ago. I'm like, it's good. I don't need any more watches. I'm not into watches. I don't know. Maybe if I was, maybe I'd want another watch. But it's like, just being grateful for what we have and always realizing there's somebody out there that has it worse than we do. And trying to be kind and generous and helping those people. I think that's really important. And then saving, there are 4 different ways to encourage saving. So the big one, and we all know saving is important, but a lot of times people don't know that there's a right way of saving and the wrong way of saving. So the right way of saving would be paying yourself first. And if you're not familiar with that, pay yourself first principle, essentially all that means is that as soon as some money comes in, whether it's from your job, but in case of our kids, it could be part-time job or from allowance or from monetary gifts. We want to teach them to save a portion of that money up front before they spend the rest. So essentially they are paying themselves first before they start paying everybody else. And, the reason why that's important obviously is if we did it the other way around, the wrong way of saving, it would be basically saying, okay, I'm going to spend my money and then I'll save whatever's left at the end of the month. Well, how much would be left at the end of the month? Probably not a lot because we're human beings. We want to spend that money. Spending money is fun. So it's just better to save up front. And that's sort of what I've done with my kids as well. I encourage them. Actually, I wouldn't say I encouraged them. It was kind of like a must. Like they had to save a portion of their allowance or any kind of monetary gifts that they got. And the reason why we did that was because I wanted this to turn into a habit so that when they become older, when they graduate from university and they have jobs, I want them to do that with their salary. And, they say 95% of what we do out of habit. We do it on autopilot. So I want my kids to, on autopilot, as soon as money comes in, save a portion before they start doing anything else with the rest of that money. Okay. And how much should they save? It's entirely up to you. I made my kids save 50%. That's a lot. Some people were telling me, well, you don't save 50% of your income. And there were times when we actually did, but, depends on what stage in our life we were, but it could be 10%, 5%, whatever works. It's entirely up to you. And then there are other ways to encourage savings. So, and by the way, that money that's saved up, eventually it accumulates, right? If you keep saving, then you want to take that money and invest it. Because if we just leave it in the savings account, it's good to sit there, I guess, for any kind of emergency needs. But our kids don't really have emergency needs. Most of our kids, when we're saving money for them, we're saving for long term. If we're saving for short term, I would say, okay, that's not bad. Maybe even invest it in a term deposit or something like that. Or a bond. But if they're going to keep this money saved up for the next 10 years or longer, well, it's better to invest that money because, the inflation otherwise will eat away the purchasing power of that money. And I've done a lot of posts on that. So you can just go back to my profile and refer on that. So that's one way of encouraging savings. Another way is, let's say if your child is saving for something in particular and that's really, really expensive and it would take them a long time to save up for it. So, an example would be if they're saving for an iPhone or let's say an iPad, and it would just take them forever to save and then they would lose all interest. What I like to do is match their savings. So you can match $1 for $1 or less. If they save $50, you give them $50. Or you can, if they save $50, you can give them $10, whatever. But as long as, the idea is that you encourage them to keep saving. And you tell them saving is a good thing. Another thing that you can do is, mark these special milestones. When, let's say they're saving for something that costs $300 and they just saved up the first $100. It's a big deal, right? So you can do a special activity with them. You can, play hide and seek, take them for ice cream, make them their favorite meal or something like that, just to say, hey, good job. That's awesome. Another way to encourage them to save would be to pay them interest on their savings. So the same way the bank would pay them interest, this is you paying them interest just to kind of encourage them to save. And then the last way, which I like to do with my kids, is to have short-term savings and long-term savings. Long-term savings is for something that's like 10 years, or further away. And even for kids, I think 5 years is a long time. So if we're telling our kids, this money is for your future home or like your retirement, like kids are like, what? Like, I can't even comprehend that. I mean, a lot of people in their 20s or 30s cannot comprehend that. So that's why I always encourage to also have short-term savings, something that can happen in the near future so that they can actually save up enough money for and buy it in the near future. It just gives them that sense of accomplishment. They delayed their gratification and now it's like they finally reached this goal and this is awesome. And because they accomplished that smaller goal, the short-term goal, it gives them incentive to continue saving for the long term or investing for the long-term goal. So those are some of the ways. Again, you can try any one of them that you think would work for your family. I think there was a question here. I'm just quickly gonna go and answer. They take the money and use it in the same time. Oh, but I think you said, hold on. The problem is when they put the money in the piggy bank, they take the money and use it at the same time. Okay, so this is where you have to set the ground rules. You have to, kind of be strict and say, okay, this money has come in. Let's separate it. This is for spending, and it's okay to spend, okay? Spending is not a bad thing, but we want to save first. And this, whatever's for saving, we don't touch. Okay, you may even want to open up a bank account for them where you are obviously involved and you're seeing what's going on. And then you can put this money in the savings account and eventually invest it. But they just really don't touch this. They only touch the spending money. And again, I just want to talk about this. I think this is really important. So a lot of times, we are conditioned to think that spending money is bad. It's only bad if we're overspending and if we cannot afford something. But, in my humble opinion, and I mean, you can think differently, I don't know. But this is just how we're raising our kids. So again, money is very personal and everybody does things differently. So for our family, we believe that as long as we pay our bills, as long as we save some money and invest some money and we donate to charity, the money that's left over, it's for fun, okay? And we should spend it on what gives us joy, okay? And what fulfills us. But it should be mindful spending, not mindless, mindful spending. So I really struggled with this when my kids were little. Sometimes they would want to spend on things like Pokemon cards. I was like, what? That's paper, okay? I remember we would go to Toys R Us and we would get this package of Pokemon cards. I think it was $70 or $80. And I was like, oh my God, that's just paper, shiny paper. Why are you spending your money on that? But then personal finance is personal. This is what brings joy to my kids. This is what they know. This is what they play with their friends. They play Pokemon cards, something, I don't know. Or for example, video games, right? That's another one that just bothers me so much. But at the same time, I mean, as long as we have rules how much they can spend in front of the screen, it's if they want to spend their money on a video game, it's okay, because as long as they've saved their money, they've donated, they've done everything else, why not? I mean, I always use this example where it's I like to get my nails done. And so my son probably cannot understand why is this important to me. But I don't spend money on other things. So we all spend money on what gives us joy. So to me, video games, absolutely not. I would never ever spend money on that. But there are people that gives, video games give joy to, as long as they're not addicted, right? So it's what we spend money on is very personal. Sometimes I find that it was really hard for me to be quiet when my kids are spending money. But what I realized afterwards was, when they spent that money and I thought that was something was a bad idea, a few days later, I would follow up and be like, hey, so about that purchase that you made a few days ago, what do you think about it? Was it a good purchase? Was it a bad purchase? Would you recommend it to anybody else? Would you do it? And you know what? Kids are smart. They know when they've made a mistake. Okay. And so that's why when I talk about allowance, the dollar stakes are very low right now. These purchases are not, we're not talking thousands of dollars. When they get older, it matters so much more. So I would rather that my kids learn these lessons now. They have to learn these lessons at some point in time. Okay. None of us are perfect. We all had our mishaps and bad, decisions. We've made bad decisions. So, our kids have to go through that. So I would rather they go through these bad experiences with me so that I can properly guide you, rather than, on their own when they're like adults, and they may even be embarrassed to talk about it or even get insight from somebody else. So that's kind of like where we are at. And then investing. Actually, there's a question here. What are some investments that you recommend? So I don't recommend investments, simply because, I really believe that everybody needs to create their own unique portfolio. And that portfolio is based on 7 things. I don't have time to go in details over these 7 things, but I will have an Instagram live soon and I'm going to go through them. But these things are, what's your goal, right? That really determines a lot. Is your goal long-term or short-term? You have to decide what account you're going to invest in, what type of account. And that will depend on your personal financial and situation, as well as on your tax situation. You have to pick a brokerage that works for you, and whether or not you're going to invest on your own, or you're going to invest with an investment advisor or a robo-advisor. You have to figure out what is your risk level. So are you a conservative investor? Are you moderate investor, or are you comfortable with risk? Like maybe, the higher risk you take, there's a potential for higher reward, but there's also potential that you can lose your money. So you really need to take all of those things into play. I found that for me and my kids, investing in ETFs and index funds works best, just because of the immediate diversification. The fees are very low. This is something that we can do without an advisor. And we're investing for long term. So it's really based on historical evidence. Markets have always gone up and down. Right now, we're kind of like in a slump. But if I look at, those graphs that you can like pull up on internet, like if I look at the graph for the last 50 years, it's literally like this. But in the meantime, it's kind of like going zigzag. It's like up and down, up and down, up and down, but it has the upward trajectory. So if history is going to repeat itself, I mean, we really don't know if it will or if it won't, but it has over the past 50 years. Technically, like this is just a slump. We're going to be out of it. And for any long-term investors, this is not a big deal. So we invest in ETFs and index funds. And if you guys want to learn how to do that, this is what I teach in my Wealthy Kids Investment Club, which is a family membership program. And the membership is $8 per month, and you can cancel at any time. And when you actually register, you also get a free gift. So the free gift is a parent course on how to teach kids to become millionaires. And it comes with 2 workbooks, one for kids, one for parents. But the actual membership club, Wealthy Kids Investment Club, it has basically a lot of different courses that you can take on demand. So whenever it's convenient for you, they're short courses, about 10 to 20 minutes. And each comes with a workbook, and it comes with like an online game where you can compete against other club members or against your family members. We also have a private Facebook group where you can ask questions. We have VIP events. And so to register for that, you just have to go to wealthykids.club. So that's wealthykids.club, not .com. And once you register, we'll send you the free course, and you have the access to all the video lessons and everything right off the bat. So that's basically that. But okay, you don't have to register. A lot of this information is available online. You just have to find the time to find it, right? Like that takes the time. So the beauty of the Wealthy Kids Investment Club, it's like everything is there for you. It's $8 per month, essentially 2 Starbucks coffees or less than 2 Starbucks coffees. So instead of like searching the internet and looking up all this information, everything is there for you so you can actually learn and implement this and create generational wealth for your family. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about investing. Like, why do we need to invest? Well, first of all, inflation. So a lot of times, like we have all been told, save your money, save your money, save your money. So yes, we all know saving is important, but what we haven't been told is that if we leave our money in the savings account for too long, it can be eaten by inflation. Generally, the inflation has been higher. The rate of inflation has been higher than the interest rate on the bank account. So which means like if this is inflation and this is how much you're getting by leaving your money in the bank account, this is bigger, which means that it's going to eat away at your whatever it is that you've invested. So your money will be worth less. So I posted a lot on my Instagram account about this, showing how, we think our money is safe. Like a lot of times people say, I only save because that's safe. Well, your money is not safe. I hope you realize that. So I only recommend keeping money in the savings account if you are keeping it for the emergency purposes. So having an emergency fund that will cover 3 months of your living expenses. I think that's important. So that way, if you lose your job, or if your roof is leaking, or like in my case, if your furnace breaks down, you can replace it, okay? And you don't have to like sell your investments. So so that's kind of why I recommend investing. And again, like I have a lot of examples on my profile, how inflation can actually negatively impact your purchasing power and why I think investing is important. But essentially, so once, we teach our kids all of those things that I've just mentioned. So how to earn money, save it, invest it, donate it, and spend it. Then we can start teaching about all these other things like passive income, negotiation, budgeting, debt, credit card. And by the way, kids are really smart. They love learning this stuff. Like I've been teaching this for the past 11 years. I go to schools. I teach all the way from kindergarten to grade 12. And what's really important is how we talk to them. So we have to teach them age appropriate concepts. Like I don't teach investing to kindergartens, but I will teach needs versus wants. They get that. They're really smart. They actually like really understand it, even though some adults have struggle with it. So it's really like our approach is really important, how we teach them. They can comprehend anything. So once, you teach these basic concepts, then you can expand to these like more complex concepts. I think I have a question here. Let me see. Sorry, guys. I think I accidentally almost removed one of you from the video. My 7-year-old keeps asking me to purchase a life-size doll that is approximately $1,000, but I'm telling her that we should invest in the company instead, but she's interested in her doll. Oh, life-size doll. Wow. That is, I don't know what that doll is, but that's, I think like if you can teach them to become owners rather than consumers, that is the key, because that's essentially what I've started doing with my kids when they were little. So when I talked about us investing into like Disney or Apple, it was more like, hey, I know you want these Apple products, but how about if we become part owners of Apple or part owners of Disney? So I know it's really tough, but I was, like if it wasn't $1,000 US, like if it was like $10 or $100, I'd be like, go for it. Let her make that mistake. If it's a mistake, I don't know. But $1,000 is a lot of money. That's the one where, like, when I tell you, like, oh, don't interfere with their spending. Let them learn from their mistakes. But $1,000 is a lot of money. I don't know if I would let my kids do that. I'm kind of curious what the rest of you think. Would you let your child buy $1,000 life-size doll that they really, really want? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. I don't think I would. I think this is probably when my foot would go down and I'd be like, nope. Or they can save for it. Maybe they can figure out ways to like earn money and save up for it. It would probably take them a long time to save up for something like that. And maybe by then they might be just over it. I see some comments coming in. It says, no, I would not. I guess would not let the child buy that doll. It's too much money. I agree. I really think it's a lot of money. So that's it for today. You guys, hopefully you found this helpful. Again, like, there is no one-fit-all approach when it comes to teaching kids money. You can choose from different techniques that I shared with you. If something doesn't work, try something else. This course can be yours for free. Like, actually, like what I taught you guys today is essentially part of my course. It's a full-fledged course with the parent workbook and child workbook. So it can be yours for free if you sign up for the Wealthy Kids Investment Club today. And to do so, you just go to wealthykids.club, C-L-U-B. It's $8 per month and you can cancel at any time. But it's entirely up to you if you want to do that or not. This club actually it's meant for beginners. It teaches you where to start investing if you don't know anything. Especially if you think investing is boring and overwhelming. And it's, teaching you how to create generational wealth. It's teaching you to spend a little bit of time, not all of your time, which is sometimes popular belief when it comes to investing. So let me know if you have any questions before I sign off. I'll maybe hang around here for a couple of minutes, maybe grab a drink. If you have any questions about anything that I've taught so far, let me know. Okay. And also, if there is something that you want me to post more about, if there's a topic or if you have a question, let me know. I'm going to post about it on my feed. And by the way, I should have mentioned this at the very beginning. There are a lot of scammers who are impersonating me. Apparently, there are 4 new accounts that popped up. I will never reach out to you first. They will reach out to you, they will befriend you, and then they'll try to sell you crypto or some of their other services. So stay away from them, block them. This is my one and only account. So I don't reach out to people just randomly. And I also try not to follow personal accounts unless I know people, because that's what they do. They actually follow all these accounts. Chris is asking me, do you respond to your DMs directly? Yes, I do. I don't have a bot and it's all me. So yeah, if you have any questions, just you can send it there. Any other questions? No? Well, that's it, I guess. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.